I see a lot of passion for teaching, Dr. Rai, which you've mentioned that staying in touch with that has been a source of inspiration for you. जब मैं होटल इंडस्ट्री में था तो लोगों से मिलना जुलना मेरी इंस्पिरेशन वहीं से आती थी, और जब मुझे पता लगा कि रीजनल जनरल मैनेजर तो होटल लोगों से मिलता भी नहीं है, वो सिर्फ रेवेन्यू ऑप्टिमाइजेशन करता है एक्सेल पे बैठ के, दैट इज द डे आई डिसाइडेड कि नहीं यार, मुझे करियर चेंज करना है, बिकॉज these steps up the ladder is actually going to take me away from what I really love the most. I want to, take up the issue of teaching not being the first choice for many talented, young, bright, enthusiastic people. There's a lot of interest in motivational speaking, training, coaching, and all these sort of. क्योंकि मैं मानता हूं जब एडल्ट्स के लिए हम डील कर रहे हैं कुछ, तो हम कुछ हद तक डैमेज ऑलरेडी हो चुका है अगर हम करेक्शन की बात करें, और जब टीचिंग, जैसे आपने खुद कहा, व्हेन वी कैच देम यंग वी हैव एन अपॉर्चुनिटी टू मेक एन इम्पैक्ट. स्टिल हाउएवर इन आवर कंट्री आई फील ये पहले हुआ करता था, बड़ी डिफरेंट चीज़ होती थी. अब एक चेंज हुआ है कि सेकंड और थर्ड और फोर्थ प्रेफरेंस टीचिंग बन के रह गई है. जब मैं स्कूल्स की बात कर लूँ या कॉलेजेस की बात कर लूँ, not just the elite institutions of the country, but if I talk about the average school in an average city, in a tier 2 city, teaching perhaps is not the first profession. ये अब आपके क्या व्यूज़ हैं इसके ऊपर? और क्योंकि टीचर्स डे आ रहा है, इट्स अराउंड द कॉर्नर ऑन 5th of September, एंड नेशन बिल्डिंग में टीचर्स का बड़ा अहम रोल रहता है. व्हाट वुड यू से टू people who are aspiring to be teachers and are unsure? What words of inspiration would you say to them, please?
It's ironic that teaching is not the first choice of brilliant people, because that's how the world has actually progressed, that the brightest of the minds became teachers. I mean, if you look at Chanakya's Niti, then Chanakya was very, very clear that there are two categories of people who need to be paid the highest. And I'm not saying that because I'm a teacher, but Chanakya said that you have to pay the teachers and the armed forces people the highest. Why? Because he says that the former builds a nation while the latter protects it. So it's not that teachers contribute towards nation building. Teachers are the ones, only ones who build a nation.
Right.
And this is not to take away anything from other people. All I'm saying is that everything else will depend on how those young minds have been molded by the teachers. And what kind of education are we giving to the people? The problem is that there were two, three things in our education system which were problematic. First of all, at some point of time, we started looking at teaching as a profession, as a career. And again, I have nothing against that. But to me, teaching is slightly more nobler. And I'm not trying to put teachers on a pedestal. I'm trying to put teaching on a pedestal. So I'm very, very clear on this particular part. I'm not saying that teachers are great. I'm saying teaching by itself is a great thing to be doing. And considering that teaching actually determines as to how this world is going to shape up, not just our country, how this world is going to shape up, will depend on the kind of education that people receive. And therefore, I say that education has to be put on a different pedestal altogether.
True.
Once we have done that, the second thing where things were problematic was that we started confusing education with literacy. Now, these are two completely different things. Mm-hmm. You can make a person literate by putting him or her in a school or a college and through higher education, but you cannot educate a person, because education goes far beyond literacy. Education is not merely about learning how to read, write, speak, etc. Education is not merely about knowing the concepts. True. Education is about having all of that with a sense of purpose, with a sense of direction. Education needs to have a sense of direction, and that sense of direction is to build a great nation, to build a great world. Once you start recognizing that, and in many ways, the NEP2020 has perhaps recognized it. But as I said, I'm still waiting for the action document. I'm still waiting for the implementation document to be able to figure out whether it's going in the right direction or not. And therefore, what we need to do is we need to look at education as something which is core to the prosperity of a country, to the building of a nation. And once we do that, in one of the forums I suggested that perhaps teachers, particularly at the primary level, should be paid 3 to 4 times what they are being paid today. And that is what will probably also encourage some of the brighter minds to come in. And my third suggestion to the would-be teachers is that please come into teaching only because you love it.
Right.
Don't come here looking at it as yet another career option, or in many cases, because you could not get anywhere else. Some of the people actually have fallen for the maxim that those who do, those who can do, those who can't, teach. But it's just the other way around. Those who teach are always perpetual learners. So for example, as a teacher, I keep telling people that I'm a perpetual student. I'm a lifelong student, because if I'm not a lifelong student, I can never be a good teacher, let alone a great one. And therefore, my third suggestion to those who are aspiring to be teachers is that, look, you have to be a perpetual learner, like what Socrates said. And that is one axiom that I've lived by. Education and learning is the progressive realization of your own ignorance. The more you learn, the more you realize how ignorant you are.
Right.
And therefore, even though you may be teaching a particular subject in a particular field, make sure that you read a lot so that you always stay rooted that there is so much more to learn. कभी कभी क्या होता है कि हम लोगों को लगता है कि अब हम भगवान बन गए क्योंकि हमने बहुत पढ़ लिया है एक विषय के बारे में, लेकिन हमको ये समझना चाहिए कि सारे विषय आपस में मिले हुए हैं. You need to know a little bit about everything apart from knowing a lot about your subject to be able to make sense of it, or to be able to even figure out the applicability of it. Because otherwise, people will never be able to realize कि उनको ये पढ़ने की क्या आवश्यकता है. For example, कोई बोले मुझे civics पढ़ने की क्या आवश्यकता है, या मुझे math पढ़ने की क्या आवश्यकता है. Unless you show them that nature behaves in a certain way which can be better understood by understanding math, they would not have a propensity to learn. And therefore, as a teacher, you need to dive deeper into that philosophy of teaching as to what education is all about. And which is why in our Sanskriti, we never use the word teacher, we use the word guru.
Guru. True.
Guru was the one who removed the darkness, जो अंधकार को दूर करे.
जी.
वो गुरु था. तमसोमा ज्योतिर्गमय, तमस से हमें ज्योति की तरफ लेकर के चले. And that was removing ajnanata, which means removing ignorance. And to remove ignorance, you have to first of all define what is education supposed to do, what is vidya supposed to mean. So I would say go in there for the right reasons, put in your best, be a lifelong learner, and you will become a great teacher.
You've said it beautifully, and I completely agree with the part जहां आपने कहा कि अगर पैशन हो तो ही जाना. आपको शायद याद नहीं होगा, but a casual conversation after the class ended during the MDP program, where I think, if I place it correctly, around 2011-12, the early days of my career as a professional speaker, I came up to you. उस समय मैं दुविधा में था कि मैंने सही choice किया कि नहीं. I'm only maybe 33, 34, and there's friends of mine are, वो ये कर रहा है, कोई business entrepreneurship launch कर रहा है, कोई कुछ कर रहा है, और मैं I'm committing to a lifelong trajectory of being a teacher or an influencer or a speaker, and that too independently, not part of a formal institution or an entity. So the same thing that you said now, you said to me back then also, and I think it's sort of that sometimes there are words जो आपको सही टाइम पर सही व्यक्ति से सही ढंग में मिल जाएं और कितनी reassurance बढ़ा देते हैं. तो मुझे पूरी आशा है कि ये जो the words of inspiration that you've said for the teachers, those who are sitting on the fence, have a little doubt, they would, a lot of things would be clear for them. We get a lot of emails, Dr. Rai, about aspiring motivational speakers. तो मेरा पहला सवाल होता है, क्यों बनना चाहते हो? Is it for the fame or for the the lifestyle? It's become a trendy thing. When I started, we were like 5 or 6 people who were doing it full time. And now there is it's a huge number of people who have taken this up as a full time, especially youngsters, 18, 19, 21-year-olds who have yet to experience life in its complexity to arrive to something like this. And I think sometimes the factor that is driving it the most is fame, or some kind of social media has fueled this desire to be out there and do something. But unless you're in love with what you do, you won't be able to sustain it, because these are lifelong commitments to something like this. Thank you for putting that across so beautifully.